Banneker to the locker room of RFK Stadium. It's Inside Sports with your host, Harold Bell.
Well, Harold has been a crusader for the rights of black people all of his life. He has also been a crusader that have had a lot of friends, not only in the black community, but the white community in sports. And he's one of my friends over the years. We've done many things together. So Harold is truly a man that believes in his culture and his people and will always be that way because nobody's ever been able to change him. So, hey, that's my partner.
In the sports world today, everyone claims to be an insider. Harold Bell is the original insider. Washington Times sports columnist Dick Heller says Harold Bell is the godfather of sports talk, the good kind. He played message music such as Wake Up Everybody by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, What's Going On by his homeboy and friend Marvin Gaye, and the James Brown classic Black and Proud. He was the first on-air sports talk show personality to write commentaries and the first to host sports media roundtables. Harold Bell is the man for all seasons. He was the first sports media personality to involve pro athletes, politicians, judges, entertainers, and media personalities in his community endeavors. In November 1974, he became the first Afro-American to host and produce his own sports television special in prime time on NBC affiliate WRC-TV4 in Washington, D.C. His special guest, the greatest, Muhammad Ali.
And, they say that our friendship is like our shadows. They're sticking with you as long as you're in the sun, but once you cross over into the shade, the shadow disappears. How do you distinguish your friends?
Well, I wrote something once that says, friendship is a priceless gift that cannot be bought nor sold, but its value is far greater than a mountain made of gold. For gold is cold and lifeless, it can neither see nor hear. In time of trouble, it's powerless to cheer. It has no ears to listen, no heart to understand. It cannot bring you comfort or reach out a helping hand. So when you ask God for gifts, be thankful if he sends, not diamonds, pearls, or riches, but the love of real true friends.
This is Muhammad Ali, the heavyweight champion of the World Board. I want all of you to check out Inside Sports with my main man, Harold Bell. Inside Sports, it's a knockout.
And its sins as a country. We're not unique in our evils, to be honest with you. I think where we may be singular is our refusal to acknowledge them. And the legends and myths we tell about our inherent, goodness to hide and cover and conceal so that we can maintain a kind of willful ignorance that protects our innocence. See, the thing is that when the Tea Party was happening, we were saying, pundits, oh, it's just about economic populism. It's not about race. When people knew, social scientists were already writing that what was driving the Tea Party were anxieties about demographic shifts, that the country was changing, that they were seeing these racially ambiguous babies on Cheerios commercials, that the country wasn't quite feeling like it was a white nation anymore. And people were screaming from the top of their lungs, yo, this is not just simply economic populism. This is the ugly underbelly of the country. See, the thing is this, and I'll say this and I'll take the hit on it. There are communities that have had to bear the brunt of America confronting, white Americans confronting the danger of their innocence. And it happens every generation. So somehow we have to kind of, oh my God, is this who we are? And just again, here's another generation of babies. Think about it, that 2-year-old had his bones broken by 2 parents trying to shield him from being killed. A woman who has been married to this man for as long as I've been on the planet almost, lost her husband. For what? And so what we know is that the country has been playing politics for a long time on this hatred. We know this. So it's easy for us to place it all on Donald Trump's shoulders. It's easy for us to place Pittsburgh on his shoulders. It's easy for me to place Charlottesville on his shoulders. It's easy for us to place El Paso on his shoulders. This is us. And if we're going to get past this, we can't blame it on him. He's a manifestation of the ugliness that's in us. I've had the privilege of growing up in a tradition that didn't believe in the myths and the legends because we had to bear the brunt of them. Either we're going to change, Nicole, or we're going to do this again and again, and babies are going to have to grow up without mothers and fathers, uncles and aunts, friends, while we're trying to convince white folk to finally leave behind a history that will maybe, or embrace a history that might set them free from being white. Finally.
What else?
The truth. My name is Gary Johnson. I want to welcome you to our show tell you, Mr. Bell, we can get into our guest pretty soon, but your host, Harold Bell, is here to talk to us. Mr. Bell, we're going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Gary. And that's a sad commentary that we have to keep running that and reminding us of who we really are. And the murder that is taking place in this country every day, it has almost become the norm. I read a stat that said that 1 in every 179 Americans will be murdered at the present crime rate. 1 in every 79 Americans at the present crime rate will be murdered. And man, there's so many murders that we can hardly keep up with them. But one just took place, man, close to home, man, that all of us are rocking and reeling on. And we're talking about the murder of those 3 athletes at the University of Virginia, shot to death by a teammate on a bus coming from Washington, D.C. They had been on an outing, and he shot another one that's recovering, and another young lady who was released from the hospital. Just yesterday, they called off the game. They were supposed to play yesterday. They had to call the game off and have a memorial service. Gary, do we have anything on that, on video on that memorial service?
Yes, we do.
Nearly 8 UVA football players lost their lives on campus when a student opened fire on them. Devin Chandler, Deshaun Perry, and Lavelle Davis Jr. were shot and killed last Sunday night. Now, this happened on a bus that was returning from Washington, D.C. for a field trip. Suspect Christopher Jones Jr. opened fire as the bus unloaded in a parking garage. 2 other students, UVA football player Mike Hollins and student Marlene Morgan, were taken to the hospital after the incident. Luckily, they are both expected to be okay. But today, the school held a memorial to remember the victims. 10 on your side, Julie Millay joins us live now from the University of Virginia. Julie, what's the feeling like tonight in Charlottesville?
Well, John, the mood inside the memorial service was mostly somber and prayerful, but there were some laughs as teammates from those football players recalled some inside jokes and memories that they had with them. We're told a little over 9,000 people were here for this memorial service, including Governor Glenn Youngkin, who was here sitting right in the front of that memorial service. Everyone in the arena stood as the families of Deshaun Perry, Devin Chandler, and Lavelle Davis Jr. walked in and took their seats in the arena. Teammates from the football team spoke, some leading the arena in prayer, some reading poetry, and others sharing their fond memories of their friends. There were several musical tributes from local choirs and a Grammy Award-winning gospel singer. Athletic Director Carla Williams and President Jim Ryan spoke. Toward the end, we also heard from head football coach Tony Elliott.
To my 3 young kings, I'm eternally grateful for you. Thank you for being the light to the world. You all will continue to shine your lights bright before us in the days ahead.
When the athletic director spoke, she also mentioned those 3 players and said that she was speaking directly to them, saying, quote, "We love your spirit and we will make sure your legacy never fades at UVA." Live in Charlottesville, I'm Julie Millay, 10 on your side.
That's tough.
Yeah, and you know, It just didn't happen here in Virginia, here in the DMV. But 4 students in Idaho, 4 young students in Idaho were murdered in their sleep, stabbed to death. They still haven't caught the individual. I mean, this is our future we're talking about. Knives, guns is murder. And, you know, I can't figure out. I don't know what to say. I don't have any solutions. But it's right there in front of us. And I got to go back to our man, Eddie Claude, man. We cannot blame this just on Donald Trump and the Republicans, man. This is about all of us. I mean, you know, I live in a community where when I leave the house, my head is like on a, I'm looking from the left to the right, to the rear, to the front. When I drive, I'm driving, man, I'm looking in the rear view mirror. That's how unsafe it is everywhere, not just in my community, it's unsafe everywhere. So we want to just take a look, man, and just take a moment of silence, man, for these young people that we're losing, who are our future. They are our future. Let's take about 30 seconds, man. I want to take 30 seconds on this, a moment of silence, then we'll come back to our panel. It looks like we're headed into 2023 with business as usual. The houses are split again between the Democrats and Republicans, and they still can't come together. I don't know what to say, man. That I understand, man, why people can't sit down and talk with each other. You know, have conversations about how to improve the lives of everyone. But the problem is racism and greed. It's racism and greed, man. That's what's happening. We're being sold out for a dollar bill across the board. And you heard Brother Lawrence Luther say what was happening with the black farmer. How long have we been talking about the black farmer getting their just due, and the money is there, and they refuse to give the money up, man, to help these people. They'd rather see them lose their land and die before they help anyone. So I want to kick it off, man. When whoever wants to kick it off today, man, let's talk about this. The floor is open.
Former law enforcement officer Bill Spivey, what you got?
What do I have? You know, it's just a sad state of affairs. It troubles me every time I look at the news at night here and I see these visuals. I mean, I've been seeing them for years and years and years. I'm a former law enforcement officer, and I believe that the only way you're going to make change regarding these crimes, which a large portion of them are black on black crimes, the only way you're going to make change is you're going to have to get these politicians to start putting forth laws that make people pay for their actions. They make it sound like it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's not that difficult. And I have to sit down sometime and I wonder, why is it you don't have the gun problems in the foreign countries? And a lot of those countries don't have the policing that we have. You don't have these problems in England. You don't have these problems in Japan or China. But the United States says, well, they govern different. Well, if they govern different, maybe you might want to go over there and look at how they govern and maybe set up a model as the way that they govern. And you heard people say, if you make the penalties difficult, that it's not going to change. Well, my thing to that is, why don't you try to enforce the penalty? If these young kids out here in the street that are shooting one another, and everybody here, we know that back in our day, when you had a disagreement, you went out in the backyard and you settled it. It's not that way anymore. You have a disagreement, somebody pulls out a gun or a knife and they shoot one another. And until we change the laws and make the crime severe enough that you're going to think twice about committing the crime. Nothing's going to change. And lastly, I will say this: crime is a good business. As long as you can keep putting people in jail. Prisons are loaded. A lot of these prisons are not state-run anymore. They are independently run. And as long as you can keep putting people in jail, people are going to make money. So why change the laws if you want to keep loading the prisons? That's my take.
Well, you know, coming on, I never thought I'd be quoting the world's greatest, most recent philosopher, Deion Sanders, when he says that if you want change, you have to commit to change. So while we need politicians to come up with laws that are more severe to prevent people from committing these crimes, we do have to take a look at ourselves in the mirror. And we have to do better by ourselves. We have to do better by our families, our friends, our communities. We have to do and show the young people some alternatives to murder, alternatives to crime. We have to do something to engage them and motivate them to make them want to live and do better by the people who have done right by them in their lives. So while, again, we put a lot on the politicians, yes, we do need stricter laws to help encourage people. But my father once told me, he said, Carlos, he said, laws are for people who keep honest people honest. Criminals are still going to do what they want to do regardless of any law. So that comes back to us as citizens in our community to do and run programs and motivate our young people to do the right thing. So that's my take initially on where we need to go.
Lawrence Lucas.
I think we have a lot of bad examples. And those examples are in our communities. The examples are the ones who are creating the problem. And what I'm saying is, when you're raised in a community where it's controlled and there's no Black leadership, you have most of our kids are being raised by mothers and not mothers and fathers. That kind of peer pressure in the home that we had is not there. And it's difficult to figure that out because you're talking about human nature and people not wanting to stay with each other long enough to raise their kids and spend enough time to lead with example. We don't have those kinds of examples in our community. And I think that's one of the problems. The other problems that we have is that our leadership, our Black leadership spends more time on the comforts and convenience of their well-being than they care about the pain and suffering, the loss of land, the loss of lives, the loss of family upbringing. And I think it has a lot to do also with that element and that lack of leadership and that lack of a man raising men, raising boys, young men. And until that happens, until there's a monumental shift in our behavior, we're not going to be able to get to a lot of the systemic problems that prevail in our communities, and that's violence.
Yeah. You know, I just want to piggyback off of what all of you said, but particularly Carlos. As he was talking, I was thinking when I was a young kid growing up in Northeast Washington, D.C., on my block and in the surrounding blocks, I was scared to do something wrong. Not because necessarily, well, part of it is because it was wrong, but all the other people on the block, it was almost like they had an unwritten rule. They could whip your behind or take you back to your mama and do something. And so it was like, you just never knew who would see you. And I remember a couple of times where I was hanging with the wrong crowd and threw a rock, and I don't know if I threw the rock or somebody else threw the rock, but a neighbor's window got broken. And one of the neighbors told my father. She said, oh yeah, Gary Johnson was out there too. And my father was a hardworking cab driver, man. He walked me down to that street to that lady. And when he was walking me to her house, he said, man, you better come out smelling like a rose out here breaking somebody's window. But all of us knew that you can get whipped or something else, but by the neighbors. They had the community, man. And so I remember one time I told my father, when a teacher hit me, I figured I'm gonna get this teacher's ass whipped. I'm gonna tell my father. I never thought that my father was gonna ask me, well, what did you do? Oh, yeah, well, it was a different story then. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the community aspect is missing. Remember that video a couple of months ago, that 3-year-old in diapers, cussing and doing all that stuff? See, that's what Bill Spivey's talking about. You know, these criminals. I mean, starting off at 3. Where he learned that stuff? 3-year-old in diapers, cussing and swinging at a cop, at a police officer. All right,
you know.
Oh, I see Mr. Blunt trying to get in.
Yeah. Well,
he's on mute.
We'll get in. We'll get ready.
Okay.
While we talking about police officers, we had one guy who's been here in the DMV for years. He came up in the system. In fact, he and my brother joined the DC Police Department the same year, 1969. And of course, he went on to become assistant chief, a chief, then a sheriff. I mean, all over the metropolitan area, man. And we lost Melvin High at age 78. I remember Melvin from, of course, the DC Police Department, because I was working with youth gangs at that time as a roving leader. And my brother Melvin, like I said, Melvin went from assistant chief, sheriff to chief, you name it. My brother it got to sergeant. But I ran into Melvin High one day out in Bowie when he was sheriff. He left the department, PG County Police Department as chief, and he decided he wanted to be sheriff. But a lot of people don't know really why Melvin High decided to leave the Prince George's County Police Department, where he was chief, to take on the sheriff's job. What really happened is that while Melvin was there his last year, man, a young man was arrested for hit and run death of a PG County police officer. And they end up taking him down to Marlboro, Upper Marlboro, to the jail. Young brother, he must have been, it might have been 18, 19 or so or whatever, but they took him down there to detain him until they could get him to court. Well, they never got him to court. This kid was found hung in his jail cell. So everybody's trying to figure out, you know, who hung this kid? Well, they try to say it was suicide. But those in the community, those who've been out here, those who work with police departments all over this country, they know it wasn't suicide. Somebody took vigilante revenge on his kid. And what happened, the jailer ended up taking the blame, man, for this kid getting hung. And we knew that wasn't right. And the jailer ended up going in front of my man, Alex Williams, who's in the federal court at the time, a part of Kids in Trouble, a part of Inside Sports. I say, I know Alex gonna get to the bottom of this, man. I know, he knows what the real deal is. Well, anyway, man, they took this brother who took the charge, and that brother ended up getting, I think Alex might have ended up giving him a year, but he said his hands were tied because of that, the system and the sentencing, you know. Now, what the real deal is, this brother was paid to take that charge. And I bet you that brother right now is out of jail, got his own house, probably got a monthly check coming in and everything else, man. but the real killers are still out here. And High couldn't take that. He knew what the deal was. He had to get out of there for his own peace of mind. That's how he ended up at the sheriff's department. Now, when I saw High out at the giant food store in Bowie, we talked, and he told me, he said, man, you know, your brother Bull was way ahead of his time. They weren't ready for Bull. And what they mean, they weren't ready for a black man that was going to challenge the system. Bull challenged the system, man, and I was right there with him to see it, man. And it was terrible. It was really, man, facing that what you call them, Gary? The boys who are behind the scenes and wield all the power. The thin blue line.
Oh, the blue line, yeah, the police.
Thin blue line. My brother challenged that. So High, he left here. And I liked him. I think he was a nice guy, but man, he left a department, man. Let's hope that the guy who took his place, John Clark, who I happened to meet at Honey Baked Ham during the campaign. I was sitting there getting sandwiches for my wife when he came in with members of his campaign. So I had a sticker on said, I voted. I didn't know who he was. So he said, you voted, brother? I said, yeah. He said, somebody whispered it, that's Harold Bell. He said, you didn't vote for me? I said, who are you? He said, I'm running for sheriff. Okay. I said, well, you're getting ready to replace my man, Melvin High. I said, Melvin High, when he gets out of there, retire, he's gonna have enough checks to make him a millionaire. Because he get a check from here, he get a check from there, so we all laughed. So he said, you want to pass the word for me, man, you know, to vote for me. I said, I'm gonna do better than that. I'm gonna invite you on my podcast this coming Sunday, and let's see what happens. So he got the number, I got his email address and everything. And as those of you who are sitting here who are on that show know that John Clark appeared on the show and he won. But I had absolutely nothing to do with him winning. Speak the truth, this brother was gonna win anyway. But the thing I want to say to you all is that after I established that relationship with him, I thought about police community relations. Well, somebody had called me and said, Harold, you got 100 tickets to the Orioles game. Now, I'm not out there in the streets like I used to be. I said, well, let me call John Clark, man. And he got some kids, you know, to take to the game. I promised him 50 kids, but then I found out I didn't have but 50 tickets. So I had to back up. So I said, John, look, I'm gonna give you 20 tickets, man, for the Orioles game. Now, those of you who have had the opportunity to go over to Baltimore to that beautiful stadium over there and sit out on a beautiful night to see an Orioles game, you know that's another world. That is another world. So anyway, I ended up giving John those tickets. And when it came time to show up, the 20 tickets I gave him, only 3 women showed up, not kids. Not kids, man. So that kind of disturbed me, you know. The ladies were real nice, you know. I think one said something about the bus breaking down or whatever. But I never heard from John Clark about what happened to those tickets, man, because some other kids could have used those tickets. You see what I'm saying? You don't deny the kids, man. So John Clark, I have yet to hear from you, brother. You didn't call and say, I don't care about thank you, because Muhammad Ali said thank you is overrated. But I would like to know what happened, man, because you denied some other kids from going to the game. So Melvin High, rest in peace, man. You did what you had to do, and let's keep it moving. But I just wanted to bring that up because my brother and Melvin came on at the same time, and I thought for Melvin High to tell me, hey, your brother Bull was ahead of his time, man, and I was raising money for Kids in Trouble for my toy party, so he put $20 in the hat for some toys and went on his way, man. So let's hope that John Clark, you know, is a man. He said Melvin was his mentor. He'd been there 20 years, so he know where all the bullies and all the cowards are in that department. So we should be seeing some improvement, not for the department to deteriorate.
Well, I
Okay,
tell
I
you
wanna-
what, with the curfew, I've heard a little bit about it. And from what I've heard, the curfew has been positive results. There haven't been too many people breaking the curfew, not too many cases of anyone being arrested, pulled in, or anything newsworthy. So that's why you haven't heard much about it, and it sort of died down. So the question is, did the curfew actually work, or did our community actually step up and keep their kids in the house between the hours of 12 at night and 5 in the morning? So it's still a lot to be seen on that. But really, one of the things I wanted to use as a platform to springboard off is the fact is we've been so tied up the last few years, worried about all the different illnesses and COVID-19 and all the different strains and things that have come out, and we've been worried about trying to stay alive and survive that. But while we've had all these illnesses come out, really what we really still have to focus on and can't forget is the fact that the number one thing affecting the Black community, again, as we're talking about today, is murder. And the only way to change that is that when we see a sign among our young people, whether it be, and it can be young people, old people, whoever, if we see a sign, it doesn't necessarily have to be mental illness. It can be just a behavior pattern. It could be educational issues. It can be issues on the job. If we see something, we have to address those the same way we address the COVID-19 issues. A few years ago, if you had a cold or a runny nose, you better go ahead and go into work, man. You just take a few aspirin or take a Tylenol or whatever it is, take a cold medicine, go to work. But no, now we've said no. If you're sick, don't come to work, because we know it can be serious. But yet, when we see a kid who doesn't go to school for 4 or 5 days, or we see some kid on the corner who wasn't on the corner last week, but now he's on the corner every week going forward, in the wee hours of the night, we don't address those issues. So I think we just need to pull everybody back in and start readdressing the issues. Maybe the curfew worked, maybe it didn't, but I think it did bring attention to the parents who didn't want to lose their kids on the streets to murder. So I think anything we can do to bring attention to the issue of our children and the people in the community, not just today's latest disease that's taken over the country and the world, we need to do it so we can keep some people alive. So maybe the curfew did work. We'll find out.
There's another little item that I found that starting in November the 20th, the Tahoma County in California police will stop policing doing daylight patrol services due to a severe staff shortage. It is one of the counties in the state of California with the highest crime rate in the United States. They're gonna stop policing during daylight hours. That's unheard of, and they got one of the highest crime rates. So this police thing is really, really, really serious. Gary, do we have this thing with Kanye West and Kyrie Irving is still simmering and still being talked about? I haven't heard what is the latest with Kyrie. Has he met with Adam Silver or what? But Gary, there was a video that I saw with Minister Farrakhan addressing that situation with Kyrie and Kanye. Did you find that? He talks about truth. It's a short video.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Asunder, because of all your power, God can take it away from you in the twinkling of an eye, and he's about to do that. You can come against me, as I said, with all the force and power of what you have, and I will stand on the truth that I was taught and stand with God. And as long as I stand on truth and stand with God, I will be the winner, and so will Ye, and so will Kyrie, and so will any of us who want truth in our lives and will fight for truth. May Allah bless you. That listen. May Allah comfort you. May Allah give you strength to stand for truth and righteousness and unity. I close with this scriptural verse. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. To resist means to withstand. For nearly 40 years, I have withstood you. Everything you've said and done to hurt me and those with me, I'm here. I've withstood the action and the effect, and I remain undamaged or unaffected by what you do. You know, if I live, I'll soon be 90. You can't wait for me to die. But I can't die until Allah says so, not you.
All right. You know, last week we did a piece from Forbes magazine with Stephen Cohen, and there was an audio attached to that magazine, a part that we never got to hear. I just want to read you a paragraph from that Forbes magazine piece. It said, you know, the Jewish community, nonetheless, has really fought for against racism among you know, Black folks, whether, you know, those out there who been out and did mistreating Black folks. The Jewish community has been out in the forefront. But it says, nonetheless, the Jewish community also faces criticism. While it broadly supports the fight against institutional racism, by virtue of the fact that a vast majority of American Jews are white, they also benefit from the privileges and safety that many Black Americans don't. There are also valid complaints that the Jewish community has much work to do in the way it embraces and includes Black members of its own community. Jews of color often feel marginalized and excluded from mainstream Jewish life, and in many ways also reflect society's overall struggle to engage Black Americans in just ways. This came out of Forbes magazine. This is nothing that I'm making up. So that is a hell of a point there that I have said, man, I can't tell a white person from a Jewish person. So they're on both sides of the fence. We on one side of the fence. So
wait a minute.
I just want to ask somebody how they feel. Let me start off with Bill Spivey. I'll get you, Mel. This is Bill, take it, Bill.
With regard to that, I think I stated last week my concern with that. I find that the Jewish people are very sensitive, and the least thing that you align with or say something about, then you are anti-Semitic. I followed Farrakhan for years, and to listen to him talk a few minutes ago, he was talking from the heart. I mean, they have come out to him with everything humanly possible, and they have did a lot to try to defame him, and it has been successful, because you find a lot of Black people, if you say something about Farrakhan, they immediately will say, I don't want to hear nothing he has to say. And that's because the news media has been successful in their campaign against him. But I think that the Jewish people do enjoy being on both sides of the fence. And they don't worry, I don't think they have to have, what is they call the conversation with their kids about when you are pulled over by a police officer, that you need to put your hands up on the dash. You need to say yes, sir, and no, sir. And you need to be as kind as possible. They don't have to have that conversation, because I would say, I would like to look at the statistics of how many unarmed Jewish people have been killed in the last 5 years by the police. And I think you would find that the numbers compared to the unarmed Black men killed in the last 5 years would not even come close to any comparison.
Okay.
That's my feeling.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you talk about Jews versus Blacks and the different things you're worried about, you know, definitely, you know, I'm the same way. I can't really tell a Jewish person from a white person who's not Jewish. And, you know, you don't have to have those conversations with your kids about, you know, driving down, you know, driving while Black or driving while Jewish, because they're only going to see a white person behind the wheel in America. You know, when I was young, I was 22 years old, and I was doing, I think it was 40 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone in a white neighborhood. And I had just gotten off work late. I was working a retail job, and I got pulled over, and somehow I got pulled over by one cop, but 2 more cop cars showed up. So I had 3 police cars there, and somehow I had guns drawn on me, and I had to literally say, hey, I'm coming from, it was a Christmas season, I'm coming from work. You know, hey, did I do something wrong? You 5 miles over the speed limit. So I don't know if that's going to happen to a Jewish person, a white person or not, but the appearance of not being white is still a major issue in this country. It was a major issue 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 20 years ago, and it's still an issue right now. So I think while the Jewish community is very sensitive about the things that are said and done, you know, I would like to hope that they would have a little bit more sensitivity towards us, because we not only have to go through things that are said, but we also have to go through life based on the complexion of our skin, whether it be light skin, dark skin or not, that we're not white, and that anything can happen to us, not only based upon comments, but also based on just on appearance. So, you know, I could have lost my life that night if I had made one wrong twitch with 3 police cars and guns drawn on me, just because I was doing 5 miles an hour or more in a particular speed zone. So I don't think they have to go through that. But at the same time, you know, when we're talking about leadership, if we can't get the people on Capitol Hill to communicate with one another, I don't know how we're going to get, you know, different ethnic groups or Jews to communicate with the Blacks, et cetera. So again, I think it just all comes back to the community and what we do. We can't depend on anyone else to try to lead us out of this chaos. That's my take.
Gary, you and I had talked in a week, and we were trying to Bill Spivey too. We were trying to locate, you know, some Jewish, someone from the Jewish community to come on the show, because, you know, this is not a got you show. We're trying to figure out some solutions, man, to enhance our community, help our young people. And Gary, you want to add on to that?
Well, I have a friend who's Jewish that I used to work with. We've been friends for about 45 years, and we have a very close relationship. And I was just sharing with him, I said, you know, I was talking with a group of fellas, and we were talking about the show and the topic and all that's going on. And then he stopped me and he said, let me guess, you probably said, hey, I know a Jew. And I said, well, it actually went down like that. I said, it actually went down like that. And so we started talking, and he's a VP for a multinational company. And he and I were talking about it just like we would here on the show. He had his views, and he was like, man, let me tell you something. He said, we need to cut people some slack. He said, the political correctness here is just really off the chain. He said, comedians like George Carlin, Richard Pryor, and a whole bunch of them, he said, if they could not survive the political correctness in this day and age. So I said, hey man, why don't you come on the show? You know, cause we talked for about 40 minutes. He said, man, let me tell you why I don't want to come on the show. He said, and he used to teach college. He said, I used to be a pundit on a local television station in Boston, and they would have me on to talk about issues like this. He said, one of the things I learned, I can't win either way. He says, I had to make a personal choice. I was into a new marriage, and I'm like, my wife was like, what, people getting all upset. So he said, to make a long story short, I have conversations with you and some other people, He said, but to get out there, he said, it's just not a win-win for me. And so, but I haven't forgotten about it. But see, I still might be able to get it. You know, we got over 4 decades of friendships. I might be able to lure him in. But just the extent of our friendship, when he said, let me guess, you probably said, hey, I know a Jew. That's how close we are. So it's not over with yet. I might still be able to get him on the show.
One of the things too, man, that I noticed on, I forgot that show that comes on every evening around 5 or 6 o'clock. And they had Al Sharpton. You know how they run up on you with the microphone guy and put it up in your face? Well, one of these guys put the microphone up in Al Sharpton's face. And Al Sharpton, you know, he went all around the bend. He said, well, you know, I haven't really made a decision on what Kyrie said yet, and but I'm gonna get to it. What Al is doing, he's waiting to see where he can make some money. You understand? We know that's exactly what he's doing. He's waiting to see who could pay him to say what. And that's the kind of thing, man, that goes on in our community, man, that we got to understand, man, that we got to start to stand up and really say something. One of the things that, you know, based on the topic of this show, when does Black America stand up for the right thing? Where does integrity start and where does it end? And I noticed that, man, with Rihanna, and then this other girl, I think she's from England, and both of them are pop singers, are superstars. But this girl say she was supposed to sing at the World Series of Soccer, right? She said, I'm not singing. I don't care what they're gonna pay me. I am not going to sing. All the chaos they have caused and murdering they've done of women, I cannot have peace of mind for me to go and sing with all that. I don't care what kind of money. But here comes Rihanna. She stood up with Colin Kaepernick. Y'all remember that? Refused to sing at the Super Bowl. Now guess what? Here she comes, she gonna sing at the upcoming Super Bowl. Where in the hell is her integrity, man? Where, you know, I always say every black face you see ain't your brother, every white face you see is not your enemy. This is a good example, man. And there are black folks who got black face, but they are not black. That's why I said I am not jumping up and down for no black politician again until he shows me what he's really going to do when it comes to helping his people. So that's what this show is all about. Lawrence, you disappeared. Come on in, Lawrence. Lawrence Lucas, come on in.
I want to thank you all for being very open about many of the issues. I think you're absolutely right. The whole issue of holding our communities accountable and our leaders accountable is absent from the dialogue. It's absent from the dialogue because the people that control the dialogue, that can put it out there, not like you, Harold, not like this show, but when the national news media shuts down and don't talk about these kinds of issues that you bring on your show, talk about the need for leadership, talk about the absence of leadership in our congressional leaders and our black leaders. And we have to, and this show steps out a marathon away from the many other shows that get the opportunity to reach out to our communities on a national level. And we have to speak out. We have to speak to the truth, and we have to demand from our president. We have to demand from our congressional representatives, whether they be in the Congress or the Senate. We also need to demand accountability and transparency when it comes to our organizations that claim they represent us. We have to speak out. And the absence of us, because if you listen to Glaude, and there's a clarification he gives, and maybe the next time you'll put it on about what he said. It's not them, it's us.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Amen.
Hey, Mr. Bell, I know we're getting short on time, but I want to run this piece that I don't think anybody has seen with Kyrie.
Okay.
And just get you, it's only like 3.5 minutes, and just get your take, because it's less than 24 hours old. And to just get your take on what you think.
A process. Can you walk me through kind of what the past couple weeks have been like and what that process has been like for you?
Yeah, I would love to describe it to you. It was a learning journey, to be honest with you. It was a lot of hurt that needed to be healed, a lot of conversations that needed to be had, and a lot of reflection. And I got a chance to do that with some great people from the Jewish community, from the Black community, from the white community. I've had so many conversations with all of our races and cultures and religious groups of people, just trying to better find perspective on how we live a more harmonious life. I'm a man who stands for peace. I don't condone any hate speech or any prejudice. And I don't want to be in a position where I'm being misunderstood on where I stand in terms of anti-Semitism or any hate for that matter for anybody in this world. So the process over the last few weeks was just a lot of conversations. I don't want to get too deep into the details of those conversations, but they were very moving, very impactful. And it helped me become more aware of the repair that needed to be done, the healing that needs to be done still. So here I am, just really acknowledging the fact that it hasn't been easy. Some of it has been painful, just learning about, the history between different groups of people. And it's given me a greater perspective.
Several people have come out and said on your behalf that they don't believe that you are anti-Semitic or you have any hateful ideation towards Jewish people. But just to clear the air, do you have any hateful ideation towards Jewish people, or are you anti-Semitic?
No, I'm not anti-Semitic. I never have been. I don't have hate in my heart for the Jewish people or anyone that identifies as a Jew. I'm not anti-Jewish or any of that. And it's been difficult to sit at home with my family, with them seeing all of this and having questions. And, the part that hasn't been hard is explaining myself, because I know who I am and I know what I represent. But I think the difficult aspect is just processing all this, and understanding the power of my voice, the influence I have. I'm no one's idol, but I am a human being that wants to make impact and change. In order to do that, I have to live responsibly and set a greater example for our youth, for my generation and the older generation. So I just think I really want to focus on the hurt that I caused, or the impact that I made within the Jewish community, putting some type of threat or assumed threat on the Jewish community. I just want to apologize deeply for all my actions throughout the time that it's been since the post was first put up.
All right, I'll just say that's a very articulate young man.
Yeah.
I'll leave it up to you all. That's the first time. So if you want to get it, it's on YouTube.
I don't doubt. I don't doubt that this brother is for real, man, because the folks that I've talked to and the folks that I've listened to, man, say there's nothing anti-Semitic about this guy. These folks just piling on, man, for no particular reason. Because anytime a guy just put up a link, like we just show Farrakhan, does that mean we're anti-Semitic, man? That doesn't make sense.
As far as the Jewish people concerned, yeah. If you agree with anything Farrakhan says, you're anti-Semitic. The thing that bothers me more than anything else, and I'll go back to Kennedy Jet Smith, when he made a comment. It troubles me that Kyrie has to continuously over and over and over again tell you he's not anti-Semitic. It appears as though you don't believe him when he says, I'm not anti-Semitic. But I say, how many times If other people did things of this nature, said things of this nature, and they have not had to go through and jump through all of these hoops. Kyrie says he did not say it, and that should be acceptable that he did not say it. But if you're a Black man, you got to do something else to show me that you're telling the truth. So you have to sit down with a Jewish leader. You got to go to the Holocaust Museum and that type of thing. That is very troubling to me. And it also all of us listened to what he said. Kyrie is a very intelligent guy. He did not go to Duke University and graduate from Duke simply because he was a basketball player. And it's troubling when you heard people in the clip that Gary played a week or so ago, where Shaq called him an idiot. This is a Black man calling a Duke graduate an idiot, simply because that's what he thought the people who write his check wanted to hear. These are things where I've said it before and I'll say it again. Until we get together and we support one another, or if you can't say something good, don't say anything. Until we reach that point, we're going to always have division among the Black race.
I want to say this, man, as we get ready to get out of here, that yeah, we got a big problem, and Rihanna is one of those problems that I'm talking about, man. Wait, she'll say one thing and do another thing. You understand? Where do we stand for each other? Where is the integrity? And when it comes to people in position or in positions of power, she doesn't need the money, that's for sure. But it seems like the dollar bill, they say the more you get, the more you want. So maybe that is her problem. The more she has, the more she wants. Gary, I want you to play that piece on Dale Hansen, because I want to go out here. I want to talk about some of these things that are going on in the sports world.
Let's see here. Dale Hansen.
I lost your phone number when you called the other day, and I finally had to track through your notes, and I finally found this here.
Join a movement of almost 6 million Americans.
Your stuff is fantastic to read about, and everything you've done is makes what my little bit appealing off the cover of white privilege, as you say, seem rather insignificant. But I thank you for sharing this with me, and hope this message gets to you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, that was Dale Hansen calling me and really honoring me in a way and apologizing, because he admits that he is a product of a white privilege. This guy said he had 8 or 9 jobs. You know, I get knocked off a station for telling the truth, and I can't get another job. So when I contacted him and he read who I was, he called me and said, "Man, your stuff is fantastic." He said, "Well, compared to mine, you know, I'm a product of white privilege." What is happening, man? And I want to say this, and Gary knows exactly what I'm talking about. You know, the Washington Wizards has been a racist organization ever since Landover, Maryland. And you know, that was Abe Pollard. So I had to deal with the media from Landover, Maryland to downtown where they are now, Capital One Arena. There's always, and then the thing about that, I just wasn't looking out for Harold Bell. I was looking out for other media people, Blacks, that followed behind me. And I made sure that they got media credentials. And one group I went to bat for was this brother from a Round Ball Report named Andrew Dyer. You know, the Wizard was giving him the blues, wouldn't let his staff in to get credentials. You know, Christy Winter Scott, they got a girl with ESPN. They were all a part of that group. Well, he called me and said, "Harold, will you please talk to the folks down at the Wizards and see why we are not getting credentials?" Well, I went down there and I spoke with this guy, Scott Hall. Well, he was part of the problem. I knew he was going to be part of the problem, but he had somebody before him that was a part of the problem. So what happened that I was able to solve that because I had another buddy, white friend, who respected me, that was the vice president of media relations for the NBA. So I called him and told him the problem. And he knew me from seeing me at the games and stuff. And he knew that I didn't like what was going on and how they were treating the Black media. And we became friends, and he respected me. So every time I called him and asked him, "Man, will you check down with the Wizard and find out why Blacks are being treated differently?" he would take care of it. And they resented that. They still resent that to this day. And so here comes, they didn't call Michael Wilbon, they didn't call James Brown, they didn't call David Aldridge, they called Harold Bell. So now we got spooks that are sitting behind the door who are doing absolutely nothing while things like this happen. And I had to have fallout with Dave Aldridge because I told Gary, what did I tell you this week, Gary? What did I tell you this week about National Association of Black Journalists?
You said you didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, take it off. Take it off. I don't want nothing to do with it because they, voted me the pioneer, media pioneer for 2020, and an award was supposed to come and never came. And we kept trying to be diplomatic. Gary had to call David Aldridge. I called him, and he kept giving us the runaround. He kept what I call telling diplomatic lies. Because he's a nice guy. He's done more to support Harold Bell than James Brown, Michael Wilbon, or all that crew that came through me. So I was trying to be kind of diplomatic with him, And I said, man, why is it that, you can't write this up on me? I'm not no one-hit wonder. You understand? I'm still doing things out in the community. So he got pissed off at me. He said, man, it's all about Harold Bell. This, don't do this. Just leave me alone. So the thing is, man, is that we got people like this because he told me I am the editor of The Atlantic. New York Post just brought The Atlantic, right? They just brought The Atlantic, brought them as a part of their operation. The Atlantic is a subscriber. You got to subscribe to it to get it. So what happened, David Aldridge tells me, well, Harold, I don't have but 3 people. They gave me 3 people. And then I read this thing from New York Times. This says, the New York Times recently acquired The Atlantic to offer the broadest and deepest sports coverage to our readers. To celebrate the pinnacle tournament in global men's soccer, we're offering you a free period of web access to The Atlantic through December 6, 2022. Now, this is what they say down here at the bottom. You're not gonna believe this. He just told me that he don't have but 3 people here in Washington, D.C. He said, you can rely, can't miss sports journalists from 450 plus passionate reporters and editors. No other organization has such a large group of expert and award-winning sports reporters. So what is he telling me? You're a spook that sit behind the door. They only gave you 3 reporters to cover Washington, D.C.? That's what you are. So Andrew Dyer asked me to do him a favor. Hey, Harold, can you help me, man? This was just 2 weeks ago. This and that. He even asked me, I even had Gary get ready to lend support to Andrew Dyer because he was in a bind. But we don't care. We don't look out for each other, man. So I'm saying until we call them out, they got to be called out, man. They got to be called out, or they're going to continue to do the same thing over and over again. Carlos, you got a minute. Carlos, Jim just took his minute. Come on, Carlos.
Yeah, I want to say, as far as the people on the inside, whether it's sports, whether it's corporate America, we do have faces inside every organization. And whether they choose to step up and say something, that really says a lot about who they are. But again, if we know people, we can only be accountable for ourselves. So if we are that person who's inside an organization, whether it be sports, whether it be corporate America, whether it be community centers, we have to step up and do something to make our community better, to stop the murders, promote opportunities for Blacks in sports and corporate America. We have to be the catalyst. If we're not the catalyst, who will be? Because obviously, like we've discussed today, there are a lot of people who are comfortable getting a paycheck. Okay, they're comfortable doing whatever is going to help them advance, but not going to help everybody else advance. So you know what? If other people won't be accountable, let us be accountable. That's my word and take today. Thank you.
Lawrence Lucas.
The only thing I can say is, Harold, we have to do the work that is not being done. We have to be the ones to speak out. Accountability and transparency in our communities, and I talk about this, and I'll be working again this week, the whole issue of what's going on in the political world as it relates to our people. One thing about a person who's Black who speaks out, they always say that you speak out. And some reason in the other communities, in order to get back at people like you and many others that speak out, they want to give you a charge that is really false, that when you speak out, you're lowering the status of them. And that's one reason why we have to speak out, because we have to demand that we are on equal ground when we speak out for our people.
Bill Spivey.
You know, the only thing I'll have to say about this subject is you have to feel secure within yourself.
That's right.
If you feel secure within yourself, then you are not afraid to take a stand and support someone. And I feel a lot of times these people that you talk about, they don't feel secure within themselves. And they feel like if I support Kyrie, if I support Ye, then I'm going to be looked upon in a certain way as standing up for a Black man. Well, my comeback to that is, if you stand up for a white person, do you get ridiculed for doing so? And so, you know, I always say, somebody said earlier, in order to get to a certain position, you have to be, I think it was Carlos, so you have to be twice as good and you have to have twice the qualification. And this day, with the advent of social media and things of this nature, if you feel secure within yourself and you stand up for someone, if they decide they want to fire you or they want to remove you, you have avenues that you can take. Colin Kaepernick stood up for what he believed in, and they ridiculed him. But in the end, Colin Kaepernick got paid.
Gary?
Oof. I mean, there are a lot of people in positions of power. And like Bill said, if you're not comfortable with yourself, then, you know, you're conflicted as to should you step out there. And so, I mean, that's where, you know, your own personal courage comes in. Being, you know, or do you have the courage or the willingness to act on what you believe to be truth, regardless of the circumstances? And people, that's an individual choice that people have to make. I get a little bit of flack having a website called blackmeninamerica.com, but I'm pretty comfortable with myself. So I just say thank you and move on. We just keep it moving, because I mean, I have goals for the site, for the show, so we're good.
You know, as we go out of here, I did a blog a couple of years ago, and it was Harry Edwards, Dr. Harry Edwards, who was the architect of the 1968 Olympic boycott with Tommy Smith and John Carlos. And in the article I wrote, I said, this is what Dr. Harry Edwards said about Charles Barkley and Michael Wilbon. This is what he said. He said, I love Charles Barkley. As long as he's sitting on the sports desk at TNT trying to explain why the Clippers will never win a championship, as long as their toughest, most consistently competitive player is a 6'1" guard. But when he begins to offer jaw-dropping, ignorant, and uninformed opinions on issues from Obama's Syria cis policy to the criminal predispositions and proclivities of the Black community, he said, I find something more productive to do, like taking out the garbage or cleaning up my lawn. And the saddest part of it all is that he apparently doesn't realize that the networks and interviewers are just flat out clowning him. It's what crazy crap can we prompt Barkley to say, and all the better if it's an attack on Black people. And that's the real deal, man. You know, I look at Andrew Dye, I look at his brother up, the general manager of the Channel 9. These people know who they're hiring. They know who they're hiring, man, that they are not going to reach out and try to pull other folks with them, man. So we got to understand what we're surrounded with. The Christy Winter Scott, you forgot where you came from. You understand? All of you, we got to stand up and take a stand, man. Somebody gonna have to follow behind Harold Bell. You're gonna catch hell, but baby, you're gonna have peace of mind. Remember, you cannot soar with eagles if you gonna hang out with chickens.
By the river, in a little tent, like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it is. Then I go to my brother. And I say, brother, help me please. But he wind up knocking me back down on the knee. There've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able, Father, to carry on. And it's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it is. Yes it is. Yes it is. Said I know that a change is gonna come one day. I know a change gonna come. Yes, it is. I know. Said life can be hard. Oh, yeah. And times can get rough. But still, I